The massive space station hung in the darkness of space like a shining star. Its metal walls gleamed under the light of nearby stars. This was the headquarters of the Galactic Defense Force, home to the strongest warriors in the Milky Way. Do Young stood straight and tall in his blue uniform. He was the first human to ever join the elite force. His black hair was neatly cut, and his dark eyes focused ahead as he waited outside the commander's office. Even after 6 months on the station, he still felt amazed by everything around him. A group of alien warriors walked past him in the hallway. Their metal-like skins sparkled under the bright lights. One of them, Brigadier Kita, stopped and turned to look at Do Young. Kita's silver scales shifted as he moved his head. "At ease, Officer Do Young," Kita said in a calm voice. His words came through the universal translator that everyone wore. "I hear you scored highest in the combat training yesterday." "Yes, sir," Do Young replied. He relaxed his shoulders but kept his eyes forward. The new battle simulations were very helpful. Kita made a sound that humans might call a laugh. "You continue to surprise us. Most species take years to master those programs." He paused and looked at Do Young more closely. "Though I must admit, watching you train makes many of us uncomfortable." Do Young knew what he meant. The other species didn't understand how humans could push themselves so hard. They thought it was strange how humans would keep fighting even when they got hurt. "Different species, different ways, sir," Do Young said simply. "Indeed." Kita nodded. "The commander will see you now. There's a new mission, and you've been chosen for it." Do Young walked into the commander's office. The room was huge, with one wall made entirely of clear material that showed the stars outside. Behind a large desk sat Commander Yunho, a being made of pure energy who glowed with a soft blue light. "Officer Do Young." The commander's voice filled the room. "Please, sit down." Do Young sat in the chair across from the desk. He noticed several other high-ranking officers in the room, all from different species. Some floated in the air, others stood on multiple legs, and a few looked almost human until you noticed their strange colored skin or extra eyes. "We have a situation," Commander Yunho said. "Several outer colonies have gone silent. No distress calls, no communications, nothing. We need our best teams to investigate." The commander's glow pulsed slightly. "You've proven yourself exceptional in training. It's time to put those skills to real use." Do Young felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. This was what he had trained for. This was his chance to prove that humans belonged among the galaxy's elite warriors. "When do we leave, sir?" he asked. "Tomorrow at first shift." Commander Yunho replied. "You'll be briefed on your team members and mission details in 1 hour." Dismissed. As Do Young left the office, he could feel the other officers watching him. He knew what they were thinking. Could a human really handle a real GDF mission? He straightened his shoulders and walked with confidence. Soon, they would all see what humans could do. The briefing room was cold and quiet. Do Young sat at the round table, looking at the holograms floating in the air. They showed the destroyed colonies, empty buildings, broken communication towers, and strange marks on the ground. "These attacks happened within 2 days of each other," said Hainul, Do Young's new team leader. Hainul's body was made of clear crystal that caught the light and broke it into rainbow colors. When she moved, it sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The third member of their team, Jaiho, floated above his chair. His body was pure energy, glowing orange and yellow like a warm fire. "The pattern suggests careful planning," Jaiho said. "These weren't random attacks." Do Young studied the images carefully. Something about the destruction looked familiar, but he couldn't remember why. "Can we see the ground markings again?" he asked. Hanul waved her crystal hand, and the hologram zoomed in on the strange marks. They looked like giant claw marks, but they were too perfect, too precise. "Those aren't from weapons or animals," Do Young said slowly. "They're landing marks, like the ones our ships make, but much bigger." Jaiho's glow brightened with surprise. You're right, but no known species has ships that large. No current species, Hainul corrected. Her crystal body dimmed slightly, showing concern. The database shows similar marks in very old records. They belong to the ancients. The room got even quieter. Everyone knew about the ancients, the first species to travel between stars. They had disappeared thousands of years ago, leaving only ruins and stories behind. Some said they had died out. Others believed they had left the galaxy for a better place. If they're back, Du Young said, why are they destroying colonies? We'll find out soon, Hainul replied. Our ship leaves in 30 minutes. We're going to the next possible target, the mining colony on Blue Star 5. As they walked to the ship bay, Du Young noticed other teams getting ready too. He saw Sangmei, who could control gravity itself, checking her equipment. Nearby, Taiwan was connecting his mechanical body to a charging station one last time before departure. Their ship was small but fast. As Du Young strapped himself into his seat, he looked at his teammates. Hainul sat perfectly still, her crystal form reflecting the ship's lights. Jiho had merged with the ship's energy systems to help power their faster-than-light drive. Remember, Hainul said as the ship's engines started humming, we're just gathering information. If we find anything dangerous, we call for backup. Do Young nodded, but something told him it wouldn't be that simple. If the ancients really were back, they wouldn't give up their plans easily. He checked his weapon one more time and watched as the space station disappeared behind them. The stars stretched into long lines of light as they jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were heading into unknown danger, but Du Young felt ready. He was a member of the Galactic Defense Force now, and he would prove that humans could handle whatever waited for them at Blue Star 5. Blue Star 5 hung in space like a bright blue jewel. The mining colony's lights twinkled on its surface. As their ship got closer, Du Young noticed something was wrong. Many of the lights were off, and some buildings looked damaged. Energy readings ahead, Jiho reported. His fiery form pulsed with concern. Something big is on the other side of the colony. Hainul's crystal body tensed. Landing in 3 minutes. Be ready for anything. They landed near the colony's main building. The air was thin but breathable. Du Young checked his weapon and followed his teammates outside. The ground was covered in the same strange marks they had seen in the reports. Suddenly, a loud crash came from behind them. Du Young turned to see a massive ship rising from behind the buildings. It was ancient-looking, covered in symbols that glowed with a strange green light. Take cover. Hainul shouted as green energy beams shot from the ship. One beam hit Hainul directly. Du Young watched in amazement as pieces of her crystal body shattered and fell to the ground. But within seconds, the pieces flew back up and reattached themselves. She was completely whole again. Another beam struck Jiho, but it passed right through him. His energy form scattered for a moment, then pulled itself back together, stronger than before. He absorbed the energy from the attack and sent it back at the ship. Du Young, move, Hainul yelled. He rolled behind a fallen wall just as a beam hit where he had been standing. His heart was racing. He had known his teammates could heal themselves, but seeing it happen was different. They could recover from injuries that would kill a human. The ancient ship landed nearby. Its door opened with a hiss, and tall figures walked out. They wore armor that looked like it was grown, not made. Their heads were long and their skin was dark green. They moved like they owned the place. You dare to resist us? One of them spoke in a deep voice. This galaxy belonged to us long before your species existed. The galaxy belongs to no one, Hainul replied. Her crystal form glowed brightly. We protect all who live here now. The fight that followed was intense. Hainul created crystal barriers to block their attacks. Jiho became like living lightning, striking at their enemies. Du Young used his training to fight smart, not just strong. During the battle, Du Young got hit by falling debris. His arm was badly bruised, and he saw his teammates look at him with worry. They weren't used to seeing injuries that didn't heal right away. "I'm fine," he said, getting back up. "This is nothing." The aliens seemed confused by him. They had seen Haenul regenerate and Jiho reform, but this human kept fighting despite being hurt. They hadn't expected that. Finally, the aliens retreated to their ship. As it took off, Du Young noticed they kept looking back at him. He realized they had learned something today. Not all species were the same, and sometimes being different could be an advantage. Commander Yun-Ho's energy form pulsed with urgency as he addressed the gathered teams in the main hall of the space station. The holographic displays showed a massive fleet of ancient ships moving toward the Centauri system, home to over 5 billion beings. "Our intelligence suggests they plan to reclaim their old capital world," the commander said. "We cannot let them destroy another colony." Do Young stood with his team, now joined by 2 legendary warriors. Sang-mei, with her silver hair and glowing eyes, could control gravity itself. Next to her stood Ta-Wan, whose mechanical body housed the minds of 1,000 connected beings, all working as one. Haenul's crystal form sparkled as she explained their mission. "We must infiltrate their fortress ship while the main fleet engages their forces. Our goal is to reach their command center and shut down their weapons. Their technology is far beyond ours," Jiho added, his energy form flickering with concern. "But we have something they don't expect: diversity. Each of us brings different abilities they won't be prepared for." Do Young studied the holographic map of the ancient fortress ship. It was huge, like a floating city in space. "These old ventilation shafts," he pointed out. "They're still active. We could use them to move through the ship without being seen." Sang-mei nodded approvingly. "Good eye. I can manipulate gravity to help us move through them quickly. My consciousness can spread through their computer systems," Ta-Wan added, his mechanical eyes glowing softly. "I may be able to confuse their internal sensors." As they prepared for the mission, Du Young checked his equipment one last time. He noticed the others watching him with curiosity. They still weren't used to seeing someone who couldn't instantly heal or change form. "Does it not concern you?" Sang-mei asked him quietly. "Going into such danger without regenerative abilities." Do Young secured his armor. "Humans have always faced dangers without special powers," he explained. "We learn to be careful, to think ahead, and to keep going even when things get hard." The team boarded their stealth ship, specially designed for this mission. As they approached the massive ancient fleet, Ta-Wan began interfering with their detection systems. Sang-mei used her powers to adjust their ship's gravity field, making them appear as nothing more than space debris. "Remember," Haenul said as they prepared to dock with the fortress ship, "we must succeed. The lives of billions depend on us." Do Young looked at his teammates. Each of them was considered a hero in their own right, yet they had never faced a challenge like this. The ancients were powerful, but they had never faced a team like this before, especially one with a human member who brought a completely different kind of strength to the mission. The inside of the ancient fortress ship was dark and cold. The team moved silently through the ventilation shafts, with Sang-mei's gravity control making their progress swift and silent. Tai-Wan's consciousness spread through the ship's systems, keeping them hidden from sensors. "Command center is 3 levels up," Haenul whispered, her crystal form dimmed to avoid detection. "But security is getting tighter." They emerged from the shafts into a massive room filled with ancient technology. Strange machines hummed with power, and green energy flowed through transparent tubes in the walls. Jiho's energy form pulsed with excitement as he studied the machinery. "These are weapons controls," he said. "We can shut down their entire fleet from here." Suddenly, alarms blared through the ship. Tai-Wan's mechanical body stiffened. "They've detected my presence in their systems. Guards are coming." The doors burst open as ancient warriors poured into the room. Their biomechanical armor made them look like giants. The team split up, each using their unique abilities to fight back. Sang-Mei created gravity wells that crushed their enemies' armor. Haenul formed crystal barriers to block their weapons. Ji-Ho became pure lightning, shorting out their systems. Do-Young fought smart, using the ancient's size against them. His smaller human frame let him move quickly between their slow but powerful attacks. He made his way toward the main control panel, knowing they had to complete their mission. Then he saw it. One of the ancients had aimed a massive energy cannon at his teammates. Haenul was focused on blocking attacks from the front. Ji-Ho was occupied with the ship's systems. They didn't see the danger. Without hesitation, Do-Young leaped forward. "Look out," he shouted, pushing his teammates aside. The energy beam hit him instead, and in a flash of blinding light, his left arm was gone below the elbow. The room went completely silent. The ancient warriors stopped fighting, staring in horror. They had never seen an injury that didn't immediately heal. Haenul's crystal form trembled. Sang-Mei's gravity powers faltered. Even Ji-Ho's energy form dimmed with shock. But Do-Young didn't stop. Ignoring the pain, he pulled out his backup weapon with his remaining hand. "Complete the mission," he ordered through gritted teeth. "We don't have much time." His teammates stared at him, frozen. In their long lives, they had never seen someone continue fighting after such an injury. The ancients too seemed unable to move, transfixed by this display of human resilience. "Move," Do-Young shouted, firing at the energy cannon, destroying it before it could charge for another shot. His action broke the spell. His teammates returned to their tasks, but their movements were shaky, distracted by what they had witnessed. The mission had reached its critical point, but now something had changed. The ancients weren't just fighting enemies anymore. They were facing something they didn't understand. A being who could lose a part of himself and keep fighting. Blood dripped onto the ancient metal floor as Do-Young moved toward the main control panel. His remaining hand held his weapon steady. The pain was intense, but his military training helped him stay focused. Years of preparation had taught him how to function even when badly injured. The system requires 3 separate inputs to shut down. Ta-1 reported, his mechanical body connected to the control panel. His usual confident tone wavered as he glanced at Do-Young's injury. Haenul tried to approach Do-Young. "You need medical attention," she said, her crystal form reflecting the worry in her voice. "We can handle the rest." "No time," Do-Young responded firmly. "Billions of lives depend on us completing this mission now." He moved to one of the control stations, keeping his injured arm close to his body. "Tell me what to do." The ancient warriors who remained conscious watched in disbelief. They whispered among themselves in their old language, pointing at the human who refused to stop despite his grievous injury. Ji-Ho's energy form pulsed with admiration as he worked on the second control station. "In all my centuries, I have never witnessed such determination," he said quietly. Sang-Mei used her gravity powers to clear a path through the debris of battle. "The fleet will be in firing range of the Centauri system in 10 minutes, she reported, trying not to stare at Do-Young's wound. Do-Young typed commands into his station with his good hand, following Ta-1's instructions. Sweat covered his face, but his movements remained precise. The other team members worked at their stations, though they kept glancing at him with a mixture of concern and awe. "Final sequence requires simultaneous activation," Ta-1 announced. "Everyone ready." They all placed their hands on their respective controls. Do-Young's fingers trembled slightly, but his grip remained firm. The ancient technology hummed beneath their touch. "Activate on my mark," Ta-1 said. 3, 2, 1. Now. They pressed their controls together. The green energy flowing through the ship's walls suddenly turned red, then began to fade. The humming of weapons stopped. Throughout the fortress ship, systems began shutting down. "It worked," Haenul exclaimed. "The entire fleet is powering down." Through the room's large window, they could see the ancient ships going dark one by one. Their mighty weapons fell silent. The Centauri system was saved. Only then did Do-Young allow himself to lean against the control panel. His face had grown pale, but his eyes remained alert and determined. The ancient warriors who had witnessed everything laid down their weapons, their expressions showing something new: respect. The medical bay of the Galactic Defense Force station was unusually crowded. Du Young sat on the examination bed while doctors studied his healing wound. His teammates stood nearby, still processing what they had witnessed during the mission. Commander Yunho's energy form glowed softly as he spoke. The ancient fleet has retreated beyond the galaxy's edge. Their leaders have requested peace talks. He paused, looking at Du Young. Your actions changed their view of younger species. Hanul stepped forward, her crystal form catching the light. I must admit, we all learned something important. She turned to Du Young. When you lost your arm, we froze. In our worlds, such injuries do not exist. We thought it meant defeat. But you showed us different, Jai-Ho added, his energy form pulsing gently. You proved that losing a part of yourself doesn't mean losing your strength. Du Young looked at his bandaged arm. The doctors had already started preparing him for a prosthetic limb. In human history, he explained, people have always adapted to their injuries. We learn to live with changes we can't reverse. Sang Mi moved closer, her control over gravity making her steps light. I have lived for centuries, but I never understood this kind of courage. When we get hurt, our bodies fix themselves. We never learn to face permanent changes. Taiwan's mechanical body hummed as he processed this information. Perhaps this is why humans have survived so many challenges. You do not expect things to return to normal. You create a new normal. The medical bay's door opened, and Brigadier Kita entered. His metallic scales shimmered as he approached Du Young. The ancient leaders asked specifically about you, he said. They want to understand how a being can lose a part of themselves and grow stronger. Du Young smiled slightly. It's not about growing stronger. It's about not letting the loss define you. Humans have always known that life goes on, even when things change. The doctors brought in an advanced prosthetic arm. Unlike the mechanical limbs used by species like Taiwan, this one was designed specifically for human biology. It would become part of Du Young, not a temporary solution. As the doctors explained the procedure, Du Young's teammates watched with newfound understanding. They were beginning to see that their way of healing, the instant recovery they had always relied on, might have made them miss something important about strength. 3 months after the ancient fleet incident, the Galactic Defense Force headquarters buzzed with activity. In one of the main training rooms, Du Young stood before a group of new recruits from various species. His new prosthetic arm gleamed under the bright lights as he demonstrated combat techniques. Welcome to advanced adaptation training, he said, looking at the diverse group before him. Some were energy beings like Jai-Ho, others crystalline like Hanul, and a few were new human recruits. Today, we learn how different species handle challenges. Commander Yunho observed from the back of the room, his energy form glowing with approval. The new training program had been his idea, developed after seeing how the team's experience with Du Young had changed their understanding of strength. Hanul, now serving as a senior instructor, stepped forward. Before the ancient fleet incident, we thought we knew what made a warrior strong. We were wrong. She gestured to Du Young. We learned that true strength comes in many forms. Du Young demonstrated a series of movements with his prosthetic arm. The non-human recruits watched with intense interest. They had never seen someone adapt to a permanent change with such skill. The ancients now send their warriors to train with us, Sang Mi announced as she entered the room. They say humans have taught them something their advanced technology never could: how to face change without fear. A young human recruit raised her hand. Sir, isn't it harder to fight with a prosthetic arm? Du Young smiled. Different, not harder. That's the lesson we're teaching here. Every species has their own ways of handling challenges. Humans adapt. Energy beings reform. Crystal beings regenerate. Each way is valuable. Taiwan's mechanical body hummed as he added, the Galactic Defense Force is stronger now because we understand these differences. We no longer expect everyone to recover the same way. Jai-Ho floated near the ceiling, his energy form bright with excitement. The peace talks with the ancients succeeded because they saw something new in humans. They saw that losing a battle doesn't mean losing the war, and losing a part of yourself doesn't mean losing your spirit. As the training session continued, Du Yum watched the recruits practice together. Humans helped energy beings understand physical limitations. Crystal beings taught humans about resilience. Each species learned from the others. Commander Yunho approached Du Yum after the session. The other commanders were skeptical about this program, he said. But now every GDF station wants to implement it. You've changed how we think about strength. Du Yum looked at his prosthetic arm, then at the departing recruits. We all change, he replied. The galaxy is stronger when we understand each other's strengths and limitations. Outside the training room window, ships from all species, including ancient vessels, flew past the station. The galaxy had entered a new era of understanding, all because one human had shown them that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from healing, but from adapting to change.